Okay.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to 21-22 school year. So this is our first August TAA Leaders Forum meeting, and a good group in here. So thanks for everybody taking the time out today, and hopefully we'll have a little bit of time at the end of this meeting just to talk about what's going on with everybody. And I'm not exactly sure how long the ADE presentation will be, but I wanted to get them kind of in here and at the beginning of this, as they had just presented at ASBO last month, the new common logon portal update, or honestly, I'm not really sure what to expect because I didn't get a chance to see it. But I guess for those of you that were at ASBO and did see it, this will be kind of a reiteration of that, but also hopefully an opportunity for questions and answers at the end of their presentation. So welcome again, and I'll hand it over to Monica. I'm going to make you the host, and then you should be able to share your screen, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
All right, you should have host capabilities now. And I'm going to stop share.
All right, can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Very good. So thank you so much, Jason. My name is Monica Paz. I am with the School Finance Account Analyst team. And with me, I have Irene Garcia Hobbs, the Director of Operations Support. We're the team that you guys call if there are questions with your vehicle inventory or transportation route reports. So we're going to go over today, and I'm excited to go over the new applications, specifically with this group, because I know this group will have really meaningful feedback. So I'm excited about that. At ASBO, there wasn't really a ton of time. We did get good feedback there, but there wasn't a ton of time afterwards for much feedback or conversation. So I'm excited to present to you guys today. So we are going to talk about deadlines, the user manual that will be coming out, the new reporting system, and then hopefully I'll have an opportunity to demo the actual system. So the deadlines haven't changed. As far as the 100-day reporting, we are still having to follow what's in statute. After your 100th day for your LEA or district, your report is due 12 days after your 100th day. And the same kind of situation with common logon, we're going to open the window, a global window, and then we're going to close the window globally. Keeping in mind the schools that have a 4-day calendar that may have a longer 100th day. Most LEAs that are a 5-day calendar typically reach their 100th day sometime in January, early February. 4 days or some of those elementary schools, districts can go a little bit later, up until like March, April. So we are keeping that in mind. But as far as what's in statute, the deadlines are still the same. And then the same holds true for vehicle inventory, due by July 15th of that fiscal year. And then we'll be opening the window sometime in May. So there is actually a user's manual, which is a screenshot, kind of play-by-play of the new application. Not a ton has changed as far as the application, other than it looks prettier. It's a little bit more bubbly, but as far as the questions and the things that we are asking for you to report, it's the same. So I think that we can all have a sigh of relief knowing that we're asking the same information. We're not asking for you to change anything internally, procedurally, what you've been doing in your roles for years and years. We're not asking for you to change that. It's simply the application, it has a different look. And so we are going to actually be doing training December 7th, where we'll go in and do a live training in the application prior to the window opening in January. And we'll make sure to have that manual available to you November 1st, and we will make sure to email the listed transportation director in your budgets. So whoever your business manager or CFO lists on the budgets contact information form as the transportation person. So if you're not sure if that's you, please talk to your CFO or business manager, whoever the person is at the district that submits your budgets, to ADE, because there is a contact information that gets submitted, and that's where we pull that information, because to us, that's the most updated source for contact. So the new reporting system is no longer in Common Logon. So we're no longer going to log into Common Logon. We're going to log into the new platform that is called ADEConnect. And so when you click on the school ADE's homepage, you'll see that dark blue bar menu, and you'll see ADEConnect. Currently, we're going to go into Common Logon for prior year transportation, and then moving forward, we're going to go into ADEConnect. And you'll see the new platform. You'll see transportation application in your ADEConnect file. We are actually working with and I thought that I had added it to this one. Please, hang on just a second. I did, weird. So this role here of transportation application is a role. It's a permission for this application. And so we are working with our IT department to get anybody in Common Logon that had the role of transportation vehicle inventory or transportation routes is going to automatically be assigned this new transportation application role within ADEConnect. So you shouldn't have to do anything if you are the person that's listed currently in Common Logon. But if you are not, then we are going to assign whoever your listed entity administrator is within your district. So an entity administrator is somebody that has the authority to manage the roles or permissions within your district for all the different types of applications under ADEConnect. So ADEConnect is that kind of umbrella platform for all of the applications that get for data that gets submitted to ADE. So like student data, health and nutrition, ESS, ELL. Each one of them has its own application. You have transportation. And so your entity administrator within your district should be able to assign the role to you if for whatever reason you aren't currently listed as that person within Common Logon. And then if you do not have, for whatever reason, an entity administrator listed, then at that point you'll have to submit a help desk ticket so that we can make sure to get you the application within ADEConnect. So once we go in there, we click on the transportation application. Both routes and inventory are in the same spot. You'll see the district that you're logged in for. I know sometimes transportation districts, you have a shared role where you're reporting for two different districts. So we want to make sure that you know who you're reporting for, and you'll see the dates for submission window. And so I have this kind of boxed red. It won't be boxed red when you log in to see that the window has been opened for you. You'll see that the submission window has been open. And in this, at the time that I did this, I only had the global submission window open for vehicle inventory and transportation route until August 13th. I did go in and extend that so that we can take a look at it. So transportation routes, if I click on transportation routes, I'm going to have those very similar windows that you're used to seeing in Common Logon as far as what needs to be reported, daily routes, contracted, and then of course other route information. The biggest difference on this for routes information that's being reported and actual students that are being reported is that they're both on the same screen. And so you'll see instead of actual having one screen and then you go to the next screen and you're doing estimates, they're both on the same screen. So hopefully that's a little bit easier as far as what you're having to do for data entry. Hopefully procedurally, internally, that doesn't change a whole lot of what you're doing on your side. But that is the biggest difference on what is being reported for routes, actual and estimated on the first page that's on the same page. So it's not the 2-pager. And then you'll see here down to the left, it's the same exact questions. And we did have a meeting about updating the questions and the verbiage regarding these questions. And there wasn't really a whole lot that we could do to update the questions as far as the way that they were being asked that wouldn't change the meaning of them. You'd be surprised how a tiny period or a punctuation can change an entire meaning of a sentence. So we didn't want to have to do that. We did have an hour-long meeting about changing some of these, and it turned into a big thing. And we're like, no, we're gonna keep it the same, same questions so we can get the same information from you. Other route information, you'll see this exactly the same as far as reporting bus tokens. Paved miles is still on there. I couldn't get that off of there. As you know, in common logon, paved miles was a field that we do not use. But for whatever reason, we wanted to continue to collect that information. Should something change in statute where school buses that are reported on non-paved miles, if there's some sort of different funding source for whatever reason. So we wanted to continue collecting that information, and it's up to you whether or not you report that information. But that's still the same as far as what you need to report. The contractors list, so the list itself will show you a list of both active and inactive, and this one is a little bit different in that it will show both active and inactive as far as the contractors list itself. But in the application, when you are reporting the contractors for that year, it's only going to show you the active contractors. And so if I were to go out of here and go to that main page, you'll see the contractors list accordion. If you click on that, this is simply just kind of like your directory of all of the contractors that you've ever contracted with. This information was imported as well as the vehicle inventory from Common Logon. So this information got sent over. So I will say that if you have to manage an existing contractor, and this is one of the actual questions that got asked in ASBO, if you have an existing contractor that you have to edit for whatever reason, they've updated their phone number, they've updated their address, whatever the situation that you have to update an existing contractor, if you go in there, mind you, this information has been imported from Common Logon. Common Logon didn't have required fields. So just be careful when you're going in there and managing or editing contractors in the new platform, because it does have requirements. It does have required fields. So where you didn't have to maybe enter that information before, the new system is asking that of you. And so I've mentioned before in other presentations, like transportation is always a new world to me. And so I often hear stories where I'm like, wow, I didn't realize I was such a city girl. Because one of the things that was mentioned to ASBO is that email is a requirement. And so we were like, who doesn't have an email? And so somebody very graciously was like, there's lots of instances, and gave us instances where a parent or a contractor may not have an email. And we were like, are they living under a rock? But I mean, it's true. There are instances. So we are actually working with IT to have that field removed as far as what is required. So if you have any concerns about what is required on this, please make sure to provide feedback, and we'll talk about that more at the end. But this was one thing that did stick out at the conference. So the ASBO, so the active contractor list, when you're importing or inputting your routes, you will see on the left-hand side, it's kind of blurred out there, the contractor name, and you only see the active ones. So the list before, you'll be able to manage and clean that up so that you're not having to see the list of inactive contractors. So you'll only see the active ones, and then you'll simply input the information for eligible students, and then miles. And then with vehicle inventory, so routes will be open in January, inventory will be open in May. And so the vehicle inventory and vehicle mileage will be open in May. So these two buttons down here will become available. And so vehicle inventory, this guy also got imported from Common Logon. So if you are one of those districts, and I won't say who's who here, who has not submitted vehicle inventory, it's something that you have to do. You absolutely have to do it this time, and we're not messing around. No, just kidding. If there is no vehicle inventory, the new system is smart enough to not calculate TSL, your transportation support level. Transportation support level equals money, equals funding. So if there is not vehicle inventory currently in your Common Logon, then there is no vehicle inventory that has been imported into the new system. So very, very important. The only time that there is no vehicle inventory is if your district genuinely contracts all of your transportation. And so in those instances, those contracted miles will be reported as contracted miles, and you're not going to have vehicle inventory. So in those instances, vehicle inventory and TSL will be generated, so there will not be an impact there. And so I just wanted you to be aware, because that is a significant change from what we've had in the past. Vehicle inventory, very, very important. And so here you will have the status of retired and in service. To add a vehicle, we simply click on the add new vehicle button. We'll put in the information such as vehicle code, which is whatever code that you want it to be. If it's a bus number 1, bus route 10, if it's a color, it's a text field. So whatever it is that you want to do and what you've been putting in the past, that's what you would put there. License plate and VIN number. And then the vehicle information such as body style, purchase date, and then the meter. We'll talk about the meter in just a minute. When you are editing a vehicle, the only fields that cannot be edited are the VIN number and then the vehicle information fields such as the body type. And then the purchase information. So if you do have the vehicle code or license plate number, that does need to be updated, because those can change. Those are the only 2 fields. So be very careful if you are adding a new bus, because you can't edit that information once it's been saved. And then the replace a meter button, common logon. This was like the biggest source of pain for a lot of transportation directors, and even in school finance, is adding that meter when prior year odometer readings hadn't been put. So hopefully we won't have so much of that oops, I added a meter issue. But if you did need to replace a meter because the odometer truly did get replaced, and those are few instances that I can think of that I've actually heard in the 7 years that I've been with ADE, then you still have that capability of reporting that the meter has been replaced, the start date, and then the starting miles of that odometer reading. And then if you retire a vehicle, you can still retire a vehicle. It just has to be greater than or equal to the last reported odometer reading miles. So there are some validation pieces on here. And so on here, I reported that I was trying to retire this vehicle with 10 miles, and you'll see that there's a validation error piece that will pop up. And then you just simply select the reason. Should you retire a vehicle, you do have the opportunity to reactivate it again. And then with each vehicle, each history will show kind of an aggregated or summarized list for vehicle meter information and the vehicle mile history. This is important information from Common Logon. So if you hadn't submitted vehicle inventory information from Common Logon, this isn't going to be on there. And this is the screenshot is showing side by side, but when you log into the application, it's actually just you're scrolling down. So you'll see the vehicle meter information first, and then the vehicle meter history. Now to enter the miles at the end of the year for start miles and end miles, same as you're used to as far as what you need to report for the odometer readings at the end of the year. So you would go into the vehicle mileage button, and you'll see all of the active buses that are listed within your application. So you'll simply put the end miles, and then the system will total the miles for you. So you'll be able to see, hopefully that'll be an indication once you've entered the ending miles, if something is wrong. If a bus did drive 877,000 miles in a year, I'd be pretty impressed. But hopefully having that total miles there will kind of give you an indication if something's wrong. And we have had instances where we've had transportation directors in the past, like say, you know, my comparative miles is really off, and it's because they've, you know, fat fingered a number on the odometer reading, and their bus was showing that they did travel like 900,000 miles in a year. I mean, possible, maybe, but the likelihood of that, probably not so much. And then the adjust reason. This is a hot button for me. So as you know, and we've had many instances where you've had to submit a 915 for prior year start miles weren't in the system or didn't match, either because you're a new transportation director and the other guy didn't put the ending miles, or it didn't save, or for whatever reason. There's a million reasons why the ending miles didn't carry over to the new year, because as you know, in common logon, the ending miles for the odometer reading is the new start miles for the new fiscal year. And there's been instances where you go in, you're logging in your ending miles, and oops, wait a minute, these numbers are really off for a multitude of reasons. We are going to, in the past, you've had to submit a 915 so that you can backtrack, and you're going through your post-it notes and you're going through all of your papers and you're digging up through the trash cans to find last year's odometer readings, and hopefully you're a little bit more organized than what I just described. But there are instances where you've truly had to adjust those start miles. In the new system, we'll have that ability to adjust those miles. You have to put a reason for that if you are adjusting those miles. I will say this for adjusting those miles. Please don't make ADE defined reasons for you adjusting those miles. I don't want to have to do it. Please be careful when you are adjusting those miles. Whatever the reason for you adjusting those miles, please make sure that whatever reason you're typing in here holds water should you be audited. We are going to keep track of this button as far as the LEAs that are using or adjusting the miles. And should it become an issue, we may have to kind of go back to that old common logon method of you're going to have to do a 915 and you're going to have to fix prior year start or end miles. So be careful when you are adjusting those miles should you need to do this. But that is my my word of caution on that, adjusting the ending miles or start miles, and then making sure that you have a sufficient enough reason for that. Fair enough. And then you'll have the adjusted miles history should you have to adjust those miles. And then this is my ASBO presentation, so I simply had a note of hi ASBO. Hopefully you have something a little bit more robust. If you have maybe like a file name where you have a list of all the reasons you changed it or whatever it is that you need to do. And then we're going to go ahead and log into the application itself. But before I do that, I did want to go over this, and I had worked with Brian. He used to work at the Department of Education, who's now over at Queen Creek. And I know that he's presented this as well. Just make sure that you're keeping detailed logs and that you are working on organizing the information that you are submitting to the Department of Education on a spreadsheet, or if you do have an application that does track this for you, please make sure that you are reconciling and auditing that internally yourself. And then make sure that you have a process for both AM and PM counts. That is one of the biggest things, is a route and a route don't equal equal or run. That is one of the biggest findings, is transportation directors counting AM and then PM. And then as far as updates, vehicle inventory is going to be posted. And actually this was a slide that I was looking for earlier. We did post a hot topic, and I'll show you where that is in just a minute, as far as the application in ADEConnect. So let's go ahead and pull up the application itself. And while I'm doing this, you can go ahead and ask questions while I'm doing this, but I just wanted to show you where I'm at. And I'm actually going to start from the beginning here. So I have my home pages, ADE School Finance. Well, let's just go here. Oh, they've updated it. So we're going to go here. So we have this kind of dark blue font up here. We're just going to go to ADEConnect here. And then my screen's going to look a little bit different just because I have access to different things. And so I'm actually going to pick on Ash Forks. And then it takes me into the application for Ashford. It's exactly like the screenshots that I was showing you. It's exactly what the miles, what the manual is going to look like. And then up here is where you would, here you can either click on the buttons or you can go up here and go to the drop down. Super simple.
Monica,
Yes.
it's Armando at Phoenix Elementary.
Hey.
So you clicked in.
Mhm.
We no longer have to do a login password and all that kind of stuff, or?
No, so that's a good question. And so the way that ADEConnect platform works is it based off of the once you've logged into your computer. You may have to, it may not have had me do that. Like if I go here, like I've already logged in for the day,
Okay.
but it may have a little password or whatever, but mine is connected directly to my like computer login.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I will mention that the transportation currently does not have reports available. It is on the roadmap, so I don't have any reports to show you as far as what the transportation reports are going to look like. The only thing that I can tell you is that similar to the way that the system has been built and designed, the reports will look very similar. I think probably the biggest exception is that we'll probably try to condense some of the reports where we may be able to retire some of them and then put all of the same information on one report. So hopefully it's not too different other than the look of it. So if I go into routes, you'll see just kind of the accordion style menu of entering your information. The one thing that I can say when I was testing this, make sure that you are hitting the save button at the bottom of each of the accordions, because if I go here, enter my information and then I don't hit save, the system has a tendency to not store that data. So make sure after you're done entering your information that you're hitting the save button. And there are some validation pieces within each one of these fields as far as what's required. So if you try to put text, letters in these fields, you're going to get some weird validation error. Or if you're putting some wonky number in there, it's going to give you an error. And then the same is true for contracted miles. This will show you contract information for contractors that are active in the system. And so that would be, I would say that make sure that you are editing your contractors before you go in. That way you're not having to, and it's not going to hurt anything if you don't, but that way you're just not having to see the inactive contractors. And so it's pretty simple. We just go in and edit. And then whether or not they're active or not, there's a toggle button. And then this is what I was talking about. So these are contractors that have been imported from Common Logon, where this information wasn't required in Common Logon. So if I were to go and edit, say, a phone number for this person, it's going to ask that I enter these fields, with the exception of now email, which hopefully with IT, we're going to make that a not required field.
And just confirming that we would be putting anybody, like any parents that we're paying to have them transport their own students would go in here also, correct?
Correct. Yeah. And so that's just that separate little toggle button here, and you just want to make sure that you're editing that way when you are importing the information here and inputting that, you're only seeing active. So that is my only advice to you, is clean up the contractor list first if you have a bunch of contractors, so that you're not having to see them here on the routes. It'll make it a little bit easier. And then if we go into vehicle inventory, same is true for the retired, and the vehicle is either retired or in service. And then I can go in and take a bus out of retirement for whatever reason, restored, which
so
I'm not
sure. Can I ask a question about vehicle inventory? So I currently have some vehicles on my inventory list that shouldn't be there because they're not student transportation vehicles. Is there a way to remove those, or do you just want us to make them inactive? I'm just in cleaning up a list.
There's no way to remove those. And I'm sure that a lot of LEAs are going to run into that because of fiscal year 20 and COVID. A lot of schools were allowed to use their white fleet vehicles to count routes. And so we did recommend if they did have a significant variance that they entered that. So there are a lot of LEAs, but the only way to do that is to retire them or make them inactive.
Got it. Thank you.
I have a question. On some of my vehicle inventory, it like duplicated it. There, like bus 57's on there 6 times. Is there any way to clean that up, or when they imported it, did it clean it up?
That's actually a good question. I'm gonna have to take a look to see what we did, and how that was imported. So everything is the same as far as it being a duplicate, like the VIN number is the same,
Yes,
the code. Okay. Okay, that's something that I can take back and ask, and then I will reply back to Jason. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Monica, I had a question. This past year when I was doing our vehicle inventory report, I was trying to clean up our vehicle numbers, just I guess the vehicle code, so that we had the correct, what would reflect our fleet, and was coming up, I was getting like a response or a pop-up window that said that another district had the same vehicle code and I couldn't use that code. Is that, I mean, does that get fixed through this issue, or is that because somebody fat fingered a VIN number somewhere or something?
No, so that was an actual thing in Common Logon. Common Logon, for whatever reason, and we never could identify why it did that. It cross-wired somewhere on the back end. If the bus code was the same as, say, what like Mesa, like how many bus codes are number 12? For whatever reason, and it didn't do it all the time, it would say, sorry, somebody else owns this bus, even if the VIN number was different. Hopefully, and I won't say we're not going to have this issue, because who knows, the system, the way that it's set up on the back end is different from the way that Common Logon and the platform that it was on. So I don't see that happening, but I won't make any promises right now. But I don't see that happening.
And then I had one more question, just in the adjustments for odometer readings, you know, just like in your example, somebody that's coming in and needing to make an update, or let's say, you know, somebody did fat finger an odometer, what is an acceptable reason to adjust? I mean, what, just, you know, a typo or a mistype or something like that, that we would put in that for a reason?
Yeah, I mean, if it's like, I just want your reason to be enough to hold water. If it's something that you know there was a fat finger and you need to correct it, do it via 915. Try to keep everything in order. Try to keep your ducks in a row. If it's something like, look, I'm new here. This is my first or second year as a transportation director, which happens a lot. The person before here, we have not nice things to say about them. They weren't doing whatever, and now, you know, it's a nightmare for me to try to reconcile and kind of get a clean slate moving forward. And those instances, personally, I would use that adjust screen. Do we want ADE to start defining reasons for that? Probably not. Because we're not going to be the ones sitting next to you. Should you get audited by the Office of the Auditor General saying, oh yeah, that's a valid enough reason. So should you have adjustments to make for prior year, my recommendation is to continue to use the 915 process so that you make sure that everything is in order. But if you are, for whatever reason, having to use that adjustment on the odometer readings, just make sure that the reason you have is a valid enough reason.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I got a question for you, Monica.
Sure thing.
You mentioned earlier in your presentation about non-paved roads. How is that information used about non-paved roads?
Currently it's not. in the past, it may have been used, and in the future, it may be used. So a lot of districts choose not to enter that information, and that's fine. It is a field that I wanted to get rid of, but for whatever reason, we're going to continue to collect that information. Because I think in the past, what they were trying to do is pay on a different level for buses, because traveling buses on a non-paved road, obviously, you've got different maintenance issues that come along with that. So for right now, we're just going to continue to collect it. And if you choose not to enter it, then that's also fine.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Hey, Monica, I have a question. Sam here from Tempe Union. So on bus passes, are those only eligible for students going to and from school? Because I know we give them out to students that are in activities, so they may use them for both purposes. How closely is that monitored?
So that's an interesting question, because we actually just had that, and my stance on that was that bus passes in those instances, ADE doesn't provide guidance on who is allowed to have a bus pass or for whatever reason. And honestly, we're asking for an average of your student count. So I can't imagine the nightmare that would be for you to track which days the students are using bus passes versus what days they're actually on the bus. So for right now, there is no guidance other than, I would think, your own local control as far as how you are handing out those bus passes and whatever your local policy is on bus passes. I know that when I worked at schools, I've only worked at charters at that level, and we did have bus passes. And so we did kind of have a really strict policy for bus passes. So I would say for right now, that's up to your district's policy.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. I did have one other one. So on the seating capacity, in that, we're high school only. And like, for example, on a transit bus, it's what, 84 passengers generally, but we only seat at 56. So it was mentioned, maybe we need to look at putting our capacity at 56, but I don't know if that changes the formulas in the equation, or does that benefit the district to do that?
As far as the way that the TSL is calculated?
Or looking at our efficiency and, when you compare to other districts and that type of thing, if, we're seating a lot less kids on those buses, it looks like we're not filling our buses up, so to speak.
Yeah, I'm not sure that that's necessarily a question for me. I know that the people that will have some interested in the capacity as far as your efficiency is concerned is the Office of the Auditor General, because they do compare you to peers. And peers will be districts of similar size and bus, transportation routes of similar size. So I think that may be something that maybe the Office of the Auditor General can kind of better speak to, as far as the way that they are comparing you to peer districts.
Gotcha.
And I can get our contact over at OAG to Jason as well when I follow up on some of these questions.
Sam, are you asking about the setup in the vehicle? Like if you purchase a new vehicle to put the capacity there, is that what you're asking?
No, well, in the vehicle inventory.
Right. So
yeah.
Monica, I would assume that you guys are looking more for the vehicle information of how it comes from the manufacturer, not necessarily how we technically use the vehicle, correct?
Yeah, no, that we don't look at. We don't look at, all we want is as far as like the inventory detail when you're inputting it, the like bus information, we don't.
So I guess to his question, do you want seating capacity to be the manufacturer's capacity, or what the district is choosing to seat capacity to?
For ridership, yeah.
That's a good question. I'm going to go with manufacturers, but I will follow up with you to confirm, because that is a field that cannot be edited. So I'd hate to give you an answer 100% and then it's not something that you can edit later on.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Any other questions for Monica? Nobody? All right.
Just
Oh,
one quick
Carrie?
question.
Yep.
Monica, at ASBO, there was a conversation going on about white fleet and reporting that on vehicle inventory. Did you all come up with a conclusion to that?
So the white fleet for vehicle inventory, the rule is no, as far as reporting it on the routes. We don't typically want to see that. The only exception was for fiscal year 20, where the governor kind of allowed those types of vehicles to be counted as towards your route. But for right now, moving forward and in years past, with the exception of fiscal year 20, we don't want to see white fleet on there.
But we should clarify that in that unless we're using them for student transportation only, they should be on there, correct?
If you are using white fleet for transportation for routes, I would be careful because the department that is not ADE has issues with that. So the Department of, what is it?
Department of Public Safety?
Department of Public Safety and your insurance will not allow that, as well as the Officer of the Auditor General will not allow that, because they're auditing to not just what school finance requirements are as far as what the laws, but they're also auditing to just like the law in general. So be careful with that. And so if you are violating what the Department of Safety has said is allowable to transport students as far as safety is concerned, OAG is gonna bust you.
Did Stephanie ask you to put that plug in? Just kidding.
Yeah, and you can see if you go to the, and I did mention this at ASBO, if you go to the Office of the Auditor General, they have their listed audits that they've done for districts. And it's actually really useful information. And there was actually just a couple that they audited recently where they got dinged for using their white fleet.
Any other questions out there?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, I want to say thank you to Monica and Irene for joining us this morning. I think the new platform looks pretty much the same, but maybe a little bit easier to navigate and get around in. So I think hopefully, maybe my only question that I would have is, are we going, I mean, is this going to still be kind of locked down in a certain time frame where we can't really get in until the 100-day window opens, correct?
Yeah, and so I think we had said we're going to open it in
November?
in November. I'm going to have the user manual, and then I have the training. Then these will be open January for routes and inventory in May.
Got it.
So we'll have a little bit of time for you to go in there and take a look. I did want to follow up with IT as far as what version of cleanup they did, and as far as duplicates. And I'll make sure to follow up with you, Jason, on that. Because I want to make sure that we're sending over clean data.
Okie dokie. Well, I will dismiss you guys. Thank you for joining us this morning. And when you get all those questions answered, if you just want to send them back, and we'll put them back out to our group here.
Yeah, and if your group has questions that they think of later, like, wait a minute, what about this? Please let me know. I'll make sure to send this PowerPoint over to you as well when I have those follow-up questions. And then if you have questions later, if you had feedback that you think of later, please let me know, because luckily we're still at that state where we have opportunities to make some small adjustments to the application itself. So very important. And we did, when we were building this with IT, we did reach out to the field, as you know, and ask for feedback from some members of the field. So we did have some input as well, but if you have additional feedback, please, we are open. I'm not going to have any hurt feelings at all, I promise.
Oh, nice. We appreciate it so much.
Thank you guys for having me.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I did think of one other question for Monica. Is she still there?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Sometimes when I go into the common logon now, I'm looking for previous year information. It won't let me select that. So are there times that you cannot get into previous years and sometimes you can?
Everything should be locked down for previous years unless you have a 915.
So
Well-
even to go in to look for a report or something, I'm not talking about changing information, but just to go back and like open the reports or something like that for previous years.
So the way that Common Logon was built, so even if you wanted to go look in a report through Common Logon, you won't be able to. You'd have to look at the previously generated transportation reports on the same platform where like the student counts reports are. So your business manager's 46-1, the
Ron,
April report.
I'll put that link in the chat box so that you can grab it if you're not familiar with it.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, ladies, very much. I appreciate it.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you so much. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So I think we should clarify the whole White Fleet thing real quick. So I think there's so many of us that are using vans to transport. And I think the law is pretty clear about if you're using a vehicle for 80% of the mileage or more for to and from school, it can be claimed on your vehicle inventory report. So to Carrie's point, if you're asking about what came out of 2020, where some of us might have been using cars or trucks or food service vehicles to deliver meals or curriculum packets, that's where she's saying that I think that you can have, or you were claiming those miles. Now you're going to retire those vehicles out of your vehicle inventory so they no longer show up if you so choose to do that. But if you're using vehicles for McKinney-Vento transportation, I don't believe that she was correct unless something changed in the last several months here recently, which I'm not aware of, that we should still be allowed to claim our route mileage for White Fleet. When you say White Fleet, student transportation, White Fleet, not necessarily maintenance trucks or grounds vehicles or anything like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's why I asked that question, because at ASBO, that was a very hot topic when she said it. And it ruffled a lot of people's feathers in there during ASBO. And that's why I wanted her to re-clarify.
Yeah.
I know we've done that in the past. If we've used the White Fleet for our McKinney-Vento stuff like that, we can claim those miles. Yeah. But when she said at ASBO that we could not do that anymore, it was like, okay, this doesn't make sense. You know, how else are we supposed to do this?
I think so. Stephanie we have a leadership and training has a webinar coming up with Brian Lockery, who she spoke of, who's actually here at Kyrene. He's our business services director, but was very instrumental in all of the work that, kind of laid the groundwork since 2014 to get us to where we're at right now. So if you're joining that webinar, that would be a good question to reiterate to him, but it's pretty clear. I mean, it's written in language in the SF002 language of ADE, what is considered a school vehicle or a school bus. It doesn't define it as an actual yellow school bus. It just defines it as a vehicle used at a percentage of time. Stephanie?
So I'm going to be really careful with how I clarify your insurance company's position, because I don't want to undermine an expert in a field that I will say to you, I'm not an expert in the 100-day report or guidelines. I will tell you that the trust has taken up the conversation with one particular DPS officer who is giving our school districts a hard time about using White Fleet to transport students. My position is clear and the trust position is clear. The Attorney General came out several years ago and said verbatim, there is no guideline that says students must be transported in a school bus, period. So the position is, if you are going to use non-school bus vehicles to transport students, here is the trust recommendations for how you do it as safely as possible, because it is not against the law. And I will have every trust attorney support you when you choose to use a White Fleet vehicle, van, or activity bus, because it's your only option. Now, I say this to you to clarify your insurance position and what the law is, but I will also remind you, I am the liability queen of transportation. A jury is made up of parents, and the parents will ask, why isn't the school district using school buses? So in order for you to mitigate a response to that, you need to be able to show that you've properly trained all your drivers, you've drug tested them, you've pulled their driving record. They are as trained as a CDL driver. The only difference is they don't have a CDL. And then finally, you need to make sure that the vehicles you're using are on the same sort of stringent maintenance plan that the school buses are. So do understand, if you're in a position to have to use White Fleet vehicles, it's not against the law, and your insurance will support it if you meet the mitigating criteria that we recommend. Any questions or clarification need? I can't speak, Carrie, to your question about what ADE will accept, but I will tell you the trust will absolutely go toe to toe with that DPS officer who's saying things he shouldn't be saying. So any questions about it?
No, I'm clear. I'm clear. It's just the way she presented that ASBO is what really ruffled a lot of feathers in that room. And that's why I asked that question, to see if she actually did go back, you know, and change what her verbiage was back then.
Understood.
All right, so we have, pretty full presentation there, but we got about 5 minutes. Anybody got any hot topics that they want to bring up or ask real quick, or maybe that we can put on the agenda for our September forum meeting?
If y'all have some extra drivers, I need some.
We all do,
I'm like
right?
14 short.
Tell you. Maybe we should talk a little bit about the use of contract drivers versus contract drivers with their buses. Some of us are using yellow school bus contractors with the contractors' buses to fill our gaps, and some are just using the drivers. And how does that impact our reporting, if at all, when we talk about miles?
Are any of you hiring just sub drivers? Do y'all have a need for just sub drivers?
We've actually found that I'm bringing people coming back that have left to go for full-time employment, but they have days off. And so we're hiring them to like a 0.5 FTE basically, and
Okay.
to have them kind of call or give us a weekly schedule of what they can and can't be available for. But I mean, I'll take whatever I can get at this point, right? I mean,
Right.
if it's not a full schedule or not, they're not getting any benefits or anything from it, but a little extra money for them.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I'm looking into doing right now, because I've had people call, you know, like, will you do subs? And we've never done subs here.
Yeah.
So it is something that we're entertaining. Do you all know of any temp agencies out there that actually have CDL drivers that can drive school buses?
No, we've been working with one just up the street here the last couple of years, to try and find mechanics and to try and find pretty much anything, right? And we always kind of, once they figure out that people need a fingerprint clearance card, that seems to be kind of the big hindrance all of a sudden, you know, to getting actually some people showing up to do the work. So I don't have the time or the energy to, you know, track them down and try and keep up with them. So I can tell you guys one thing that's really worked out for us is posting in Indeed, just job postings, and I'm not doing the paid ads, but it's basically like Craigslist. If you've ever posted anything on Craigslist, it's just a running job board, right? So you have to stay with it and do them every couple of days. But I do several different postings every couple of weeks just to keep our stuff in there. Now our district requires people to actually fill out an online application through the district portal, but at least it gets people connecting with you, and you can follow up with an email or a phone call and say, hey, I see that you put your resume to this. You know, we'd love to get you in, you know, for an interview. You could even get them in for an interview and have them sit at a computer in your office and fill out an application, right? I mean, there's just got to kind of be clever and get around it.
And that part especially, because sometimes the application process is pretty, can be overwhelming, and there's a lot of details if they're not computer savvy or comfortable. And that has, Jason, I agree, worked really well to just help them along with that process.
Yeah, we've been using Indeed as well here recently, and we've getting a lot of hits off of that. So it works pretty well for us anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Any other topics maybe for the next meeting that you guys would like to talk about or see addressed? I know obviously mitigation masks, the law that's probably going to go into, or is going to go into effect September 29th about masks, and whether it's going to be enforced or not, that's going to be a whole, you know, another topic to probably watch unfold here in the next few weeks. But anything else maybe pertinent that isn't COVID related that you guys might want to talk about?
We're experiencing an increase in enrollment this year and in ridership. Has anybody else been kind of blown out of the water on that?
Florence is, for sure. I'm up almost 1,000 from last year at this time.
Yeah, my district started their online academy this year, so my ridership and enrollment has decreased because of the online academy.
So we opened an online academy too, but not many people have signed up for it, and in person is just booming. I think we're up district-wide 1,500, and on our routes we're up about 600 more daily riders than what we were before COVID. So it's and then of course not being able to recuperate the drivers that we lost to retirement during the COVID year.
Sure.
Yeah, it's been fun.
In Tempe, a couple of our high schools have record numbers of all time. But yeah, we're seeing our numbers go up. So we pretty much are above what we've been in the past.
All right. Well, I got 11:02, so I'm sure we'll come up with a few more things to talk about for our next meeting. I think we'll target September. See, I'm looking at the calendar real quick. September probably 17th. That's the third Friday. So I'll send an invite out to everybody and hope you all can make it. Good seeing everybody. Hope you all had a stellar start to your school year. And we'll sign it off. This will be posted here on the YouTube if you want to go back and watch it in the next couple of days. Okay. So if you have anything that you want to be asked in the future or whatever, feel free to email me or email us at the TA email, and we'll see how we can help you out. Okay. Other than that, take care, everybody. Good seeing you.
Thanks, Jason.
Yep.